As South Korea marks a major milestone in its economic status this month, transitioning from a developing to developed economy, we take a look at how its biggest companies have grown globally and what Made in South Korea means in the world today. And for this, we connect with a renowned global business expert, John A. Quelch, who is the Dean of the University of Miami's Herbert Business School and also serves as the university's Vice Provost for Executive Education. Now, Dr. Quelch, it's lovely to have you back on the show with us. It's an honor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, thank you.
And well, first of all, I want to hear what how US customers really perceive South Korean products and companies which have been expanding globally over the last few decades. What do they tend to associate with the brand Made in South Korea?
Thanks, great to be back on your show. So I think we have Samsung, we have Hyundai, we have Kia, we have perhaps LG and SK. Let's take those five as the principal South Korean global brands. So obviously, Korea has a tremendous reputation in electronics and a growing reputation in automobiles. In electronics, Samsung has clearly passed Sony maybe a decade or more ago as the acknowledged leader in consumer electronics worldwide. I would say in automobiles, perhaps Hyundai and Kia have closed the gap on Toyota, but they certainly have not yet achieved the same level of recognition that Toyota has achieved. But I think one of the interesting comments that one can make on this issue is the fact that SK, for instance, and other Korean-made cosmetics brands that deal with skincare, they also are growing in international recognition and reputation. And I think that reflects a broader appreciation for the overall manufacturing quality and reliability that is associated with Korean-made products.
Right, and it's interesting because South Korean conglomerates like Samsung and LG, they initially they expanded by offering relatively cheaper goods in the world market. But what do you think really enabled them to gain consumers' trust and maintain their market presence and even grow as premium brands as we see today?
Right. So this is a difficult road to travel, but it's an obvious road to travel, that you enter the foreign markets with lower priced, better value product, and then gradually earn trust and respect, and then trade up your increasingly loyal international consumers to higher value, higher priced, premium quality product. Now, when we look at Samsung, for example, I think there are really, three components to their success. One is visionary leadership by Chairman Lee and Vice Chairman Yoon, maybe starting 20 years ago, when the world began to shift from analog to digital, and they saw the opportunity to use digital to leapfrog the established competitors in the global market for electronics. That required a very, very significant investment in R&D, and obviously to move to a premium quality status for your brand, you have to be perceived as being the innovation source for the category. So when it comes to consumer electronics, just the sheer pace of innovation that Samsung brought to the market versus Sony enabled it to just simply outpace Sony. Sony simply couldn't keep up, and Samsung became the acknowledged innovator in consumer electronics. That doesn't mean, of course, that Samsung is responsible for every innovation in the world in consumer electronics, but they have a very strong reputation with consumers and with distribution channels for being very innovative. But then, of course, you have to have the supply chains to back that innovation up. You have to have the quality assurance procedures. to back up the new products coming to market. All of that backroom work has to be done meticulously to enable that company brand reputation to establish itself and then, more importantly, sustain itself over time.
And while Samsung and Hyundai, and as you said, SK, they've been really leading, South Korea's, they've been boosting South Korea's reputation over the years as a brand as well. But more and more, increasingly, we're hearing about K-pop as an industry. So how do you think that a band like BTS, which everyone is talking about these days, in which only one member speaks English, were able to become these global superstars? What do you think really led to their unique brand power?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I'm not sure that BTS band members really need to speak English. I don't think the Beatles were speaking Korean or Japanese 50 years ago or 60 years ago when they were at the peak of their success. I think, you know, the secret to K-pop, and I'm obviously not an expert, but if you don't mind my saying so, I'm more of a Blackpink aficionado than a BTS aficionado. But I think the secret to their success is, you know, first of all, there's a tremendous amount of training and discipline that goes into the creation of these acts and the selection of the performers. I think, secondly, that there's a tremendous visual and dance element to the value proposition. It's not simply a matter of audio, and lyrics. You know, it's a visual experience. And then thirdly, I would say that, yes, in some of their songs, there is a use of English phraseology that, you know, gives a nod to the global audience. It's not necessary to be fluent in English to be able to articulate a few words in a song or in an interview with a reporter. So I think perhaps those are some of the key components of success. But in particular, I think that you know, the discipline of creativity and product development that goes into the if you like, the manufacturing of these groups. It's almost as quality controlled and precise as manufacturing a Hyundai car.
So there's clearly a huge business aspect to this. And well, how big do you see this K-pop industry becoming? I mean, what kind of strengths or weaknesses do you think need to be really addressed to make this kind of growth sustainable?
So there are reports that there's been a tremendous increase in K-pop revenue generation during 2020. I think I've seen figures as high as 40% or 45% revenue growth. So obviously there is, thanks to the success of BTS and before him Psy in the US Billboard Awards, you know, there has been a tremendous boost of recognition to K-pop, and obviously it's translating very effectively across international markets. You know, perhaps if there is an issue with K-pop, it's you know, related to the authenticity. This is a group activity typically. It's not necessarily an individual artist expressing individual emotions. It's really typically a group type presentation. And you know, in the West and in North America and in Europe in particular, you know, there's a mix of artists who make it through to the big time, and some of them are individuals, not necessarily bands. So perhaps that's one limitation. But overall, it's a very impressive advertisement for Korean culture.
Right, and well, for the traditional sectors, do you think South Korea's Taebo's, they're going to be able to survive in an era when a lot of fast-paced thinking, innovation and flexibility are needed? I mean, what do you think are their strengths and weaknesses?
Well, for a country the size of Korea, the J-Ball, in a sense, have been very useful because by concentrating effort within a relatively limited number of companies, I think the J-Ball account for almost 80% of the GDP of Korea, and Samsung alone, I think, is 20% of Korean exports. By concentrating in this way, you do achieve the scale necessary and the investment in new product development necessary to be able to operate successfully on the global stage. The difficulty is if you have these very, very large companies, the difficulty is obviously that individual creativity could be suppressed and suffocated in order to preserve the status quo, or that overall the speed of innovation cannot be as fast. But actually, Samsung has basically proved that that's not the case. You can have incredibly rapid innovation within a very large company if the culture of the company and if the leadership of the company is totally focused on that as a prime illustration of the company's core values. So I think net, although there's trust issues that inevitably some consumers have, there are monopoly issues that some regulators may have with the J-Ball, but overall I think that system has actually served the advance of the Korean economy globally very well.
And well, you've talked about the importance of maintaining brand quality in difficult times. And now, at a time when many companies all over the world, they're facing financial hardship and a lot of uncertainty due to the COVID-19 pandemic. How important do you think it's for South Korean companies to really manage and even bolster their brands in the global market?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because I've always said that a crisis is really an opportunity. And you don't want to waste this kind of opportunity. So what typically happens in a turbulent moment of change or in an economic downturn is that weaker players tend to be very skittish about investing more money in their marketing and in their R&D. And if you have a long-term view and you have good capital backing your company, you are in a position to pick up market share cheaply. In other words, an additional point of market share costs much less during an economic downturn than when times are good. So I see this as a moment of opportunity for the most resilient global Korean brands to move forward, double down on their investments and their new product initiatives, and see if they can't take additional market share away from some of the established players who may not be as imaginative or as confident in their spending.
So every cloud comes with a silver lining, and well, hopefully they'll take your advice and really use this opportunity to boost their brands. But this is where we must end the interview today. But that was John A. Quelch, Dean of the University of Miami's Herbert Business School. Thank you again so much for your insights today.
My pleasure, thank you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching, and we hope you have a lovely day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.